Okay, we're recording.
And we are wonderful. We are recording. Welcome everyone to our Cybersecurity Immersion Academy information session. This is a partnership between UC Davis, CPE, Continuing and Professional Education, and Socratic Arts. Thanks to all of you for joining our info session this morning. So our agenda is pretty straightforward. We'll do some introductions, then we'll go through the overview of what the actual immersion program is for cybersecurity. What are the requirements for the course? Some thoughts around the career outlook for cybersecurity, which is a tremendous career outlook. We'll talk to you about the pricing, the program discounts. There's some options on financing your education, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. We welcome questions ongoing. You can just use the chat feature. We'll monitor that, and as appropriate, we'll either answer that question immediately or have our guest lecturer, Dr. Burries, answer that question. But we welcome questions throughout the session. Let's do some introductions first. I'm John Dolan. Alex, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Alex Hoven, program manager, so assisting some of the background details with running this program.
Great. And Ray, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Ray Burries. I have a PhD in computer science from the University of Texas at Austin. I've been a faculty member at Northwestern University and also at Carnegie Mellon University. And about 8 years ago, I got tired of being a college professor and left to join some longtime friends and colleagues at a company called Socratic Arts, which partners with top universities to offer very high quality online technical education.
Great. Thanks, Ray. I'm John Dolan. I'm a public education specialist for UC Davis Continuing and Professional Education. And again, we welcome you to our info session. So a little bit about UC Davis first. So we're a land-grant university, and our mission really is to be the lifelong learning arm of UC Davis. And how do we do that? We do that by providing learning opportunities that transform people's lives, their organizations, and communities. Our target audience is the adult learner. And to that end, we transform that adult learner's lives either by upskilling them, reskilling them, or giving them the opportunity to start with a new profession. A little bit more about UC Davis. We have a tradition of success and service as a California land-grant university. Every year we have about 62,000 learners enroll in one of our courses. We've got about 3,200 courses up and running each year. We serve students on a global scale from over 110 countries. We have learners from all 50 states. And as a land-grant university, we serve the Northern Sacramento, primarily focusing on the Sacramento market. We have 50 years of service to the state of California and beyond. Ray, you can introduce Socratic Arts.
Okay, well, you've certainly heard of UC Davis. You probably haven't heard of us. So Socratic Arts was founded in 2002 by a visionary cognitive science and artificial intelligence researcher, Professor Roger Schenck. And my background is also artificial intelligence research. And we looked at human cognition as a model for building intelligent systems. And one of the most fundamental things an intelligent entity does is to learn. When we looked at learning, Roger in particular was struck that the way students are taught at all levels, from young children all the way to adults in professional education, does not align with how people naturally think and learn. So, you know what school is like, right? A goofy professor like me lectures at you, and you mostly ignore me. You kind of look at Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or Twitter, whatever you like. And every once in a while, you're asked to do a few small homework problems. You hand them in, you get them back with very little feedback, and then most courses you take a test pretty regularly. Well, cognitive science research tells us unambiguously that that is not a reliable way to learn knowledge and skills that transfer from the learning situation to application, in your case, in the professional workplace. So how does that work? Well, it works if the learning situation and the application situation are similar. So what we've done is we've rejected the model of lecture, homework, and tests to create a learn by doing experience where you're put in a realistic story of professional work, where you'll play a professional role, you'll do the same tasks that professionals do, and you'll learn the knowledge and skills just in time as they're relevant to what you're trying to accomplish. So how do you do that? Well, I mean, we have extensive, carefully curated online material, but really the most important thing is we have knowledgeable mentors who are always available to give you help, advice, and feedback on your work. So the course in general is 100% online. And you'll be working through a series, as I said, of authentic tasks set in a realistic story in an Amazon Web Services private cloud environment. And the reason we use this private cloud environment is because you'll deal with vulnerable servers, you'll deal with real and current malware, and we don't want to expose those servers to the internet, and we want to minimize the chance that malware getting out and, say, infecting your own computer or any network you're on. Again, mentors are critically important, but they'll coach you rather than lecturing. And they'll encourage you to find answers for yourself, and they'll guide you in that process. And they'll evaluate you based on the work you produce. The Cyber Academy that we're talking about today was funded by the Department of Defense. They spent about, we were awarded a competitively bid contract for just under $1 million to develop this program, and then another $600,000 to focus on making delivery efficient. So it was informed by Department of Defense and other government experts, and we have the sole right to offer it commercially. One thing that's kind of unique about this program is because of the story-centered approach, the work being situated in a realistic story, we can actually put a lot of emphasis on skills beyond purely technical skills. And these skills are very often just as important to professional success as, say, professional skills in cybersecurity. And the program is divided into 3 courses, and you can go through it somewhat flexibly. I mean, if you need to take a break between courses, you certainly can. So the initial impetus for the program really can be summarized in a quote from our direct sponsor from the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Defense. He said that there are really only about 1,000 people in our country right now who have the skills necessary to defend our infrastructure. And he suggests that number needs to be 100,000. I have seen some estimates that are much higher. I've seen estimates that say that there are currently over 400,000 job openings. Cybersecurity Ventures is predicting 3.5 million unfilled jobs worldwide by 2021. And the unemployment rate for skilled professionals is holding steady at 0. There are a large number of jobs in California, and the job postings have grown tremendously, much faster than jobs in the overall IT job market.
Ray, I just checked the job market in California. It's no longer 36,000, it's 41,000 as of Monday morning.
Oh, wow. Pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. So the jobs are growing. I mean, there was a little bit of a slowdown because of COVID, but with things happening like the election approaching and just a myriad of cyber attacks, especially as people are working online, the need for cybersecurity professionals is increasing. So here's some more information about Sacramento. And any of these job roles will benefit from going through either the first half of this curriculum or the entire curriculum. And we'll talk about the curriculum in detail in a minute. And you can see why one might opt to go through the first half versus the whole thing. I, of course, would recommend going through the whole thing.
And Ray, we're hearing a lot from a government perspective, but the job market for this is spread across almost every industry. Is that correct?
Yes, it's every industry. I mean, essentially everyone is a victim, is a potential victim of a cyber attack. Financial institutions, educational institutions, retailers. Some of the people hardest hit by large cyber attacks have been large retailers. So for example, a few years ago, Target was attacked. And lest you say, well, small companies don't have anything to worry about, a couple of things. The way Target was attacked is that attackers exploited a system in their HVAC contractor and then used that exploited system to move upstream into target systems. So it was a small company, but it was a small company they used on the way to attacking target system. And a very high percentage of small companies that are victims of significant cyber attacks do go out of business. So cybersecurity is becoming increasingly important at all levels. And the companies themselves either have these jobs or they outsource this to companies that are called managed security service providers. Okay, go on, John.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, so the program is roughly divided into defense and offense. So you say, wow, he said defense and offense, but there are 3 courses here. Well, here's why there are 3 courses. We want to let anyone who wants to try this to see if this is a good career move for them to try it at a relatively low cost. So what we did is we split off part of the defensive curriculum into a short course that we call immediate immersion. And it allows you to self-assess if you like the work and if you think you'll be good at it, and it allows us to assess if we think you'll succeed as a professional. If you do well in the course and if you like it, you can go on to the defensive course, which deals with various aspects of defensive cybersecurity in great depth. And then some people stop there. They say, well, I just want to work on the defensive side, and that's all I need. But the best defenders know how to think like attackers. And so even if your goal is to be purely a defender, you can benefit from significant experience on the attack side. And you might say, well, gee, a lot of that stuff is illegal, isn't it? And the answer is yes, it is. But as I said, the advantages to learning and practicing this stuff is that you'll be a better defender. Second of all, there's a job role called penetration tester. Penetration testers are people who try to find vulnerabilities in systems and networks with the permission of their owners. And the third reason, there actually are some government cyber operations jobs where you actually do attacks for real against adversaries of the country. And as the final note says, the courses do build on each other and they do need to be taken in sequence.
Hey, the people who have graduated from these 3 courses, do they share traits? Do they share characteristics that make them successful, not only in getting through these 3 courses, but in becoming a cybersecurity expert?
Yes, they do. And you might think that it's very sophisticated technical knowledge, but it largely gets down to personality. And this comes out of a study by our sponsor, the Department of Defense. What we've seen that the people who are good at these jobs are people who are intensely curious about how things work. They won't give up on a problem no matter how difficult it is, because the attackers won't give up, and they're predisposed to self-directed learning. I mean, there's not always someone you can ask when you run into something you don't understand. Sometimes you have to go figure it out and learn how to address the problem for yourself. And also, another trait is a high tolerance for tasks that require attention to detail. This is a very detail-oriented profession. You'll be looking at network traffic, or be looking at system logs, or be trying to figure out the behavior of a black box system. And you'll spend hours, days, or even weeks doing that. So if that sounds enjoyable to you, it's a great career. So let's talk about the individual courses. So the first course, Immediate Immersion, comprises 3 tasks. So we think that thinking like an attacker is so important that even though this is a defensively oriented course, the first thing we ask you to do is to think like an attacker and exploit a vulnerable website. And then if you indeed determine that it is vulnerable to a particular type of attack, we'll ask you to fix that vulnerability. So now you're going, well, hey, he didn't mention a bunch of technical stuff a minute ago. So do I have to be a programmer? Do I have to be a network engineer to succeed at this? And the answer is no, this isn't about programming. And anyone can learn enough of how systems and networks work to do this. And if you have that background, great. You'll hit the ground running. If you don't have that background, we will suggest some pre-work and also some ongoing work to help you acquire it as you go through the program. So after you think like an attacker, you're asked to analyze an insider threat. Someone sees suspicious text on the screen of an IT employee. So is he doing something he shouldn't be? Or is it just something harmless? He's just kind of screwing around on his computer. It will be up to you to figure it out. Then comes a really interesting and very challenging task, I might add. And in this task, a military aide visited the website of a steakhouse in Seoul, Korea. And it seems as if he clicked on a link that might have launched a cyber attack against his machine. And he's in the US Embassy in London, and the US Embassy has what they call full packet capture. So they captured a file of the network traffic to and from his machine. And it's your job to analyze it and figure out what happened. Did something bad happen? If so, what was it specifically? Going on after that, if you move into the more advanced defensive course, if you like the stuff you did in Immediate Immersion and want to continue, you'll be asked to analyze a remote intrusion attempt where someone is attempting to brute force access into a network. These tasks you've been doing so far really involve analyzing network traffic at a relatively low level, looking at the packets that are going across the network. But if you're looking at complex attacks, that can actually get pretty difficult. So what people do as an alternative is they do what's called log analysis. So every device on a network is constantly recording everything that happens, recording a log. And those logs are consolidated in a system called the Security Information and Event Management System, or SIEM. And a SIEM actually is an intelligence kind of search environment where you can pivot through those logs, searching for clues as to what might have happened. That would be an interesting attack for you to analyze. Real current malware will be involved in that attack. You'll use online sandboxes to determine what are called the indicators of compromise of that malware, and that will guide forensic analysis. Then you'll analyze the memory of a compromised machine. You say, well, why analyze the memory? Well, some modern malware leaves little, if any, of a footprint on the disk. It's only detectable in the memory of a running system or an image of that memory. So we captured a memory image of an infected system, and you'll analyze it. Then you will go on and analyze the file system of that same infected machine to see if there are any artifacts that the malware did leave on disk. And perhaps there are. And finally, you'll need to pull all the information together from all of this. This is all one big attack. And you'll have to write an appropriate report for business stakeholders, technical management, and the incident responders who are going to come in behind you and clean up the mess. And some people say, well, gee, writing a report, ugh. Well, it turns out that no matter how good you are at investigating something, if you can't report appropriately to the people who need the information, your investigation was useless. It was a waste of time. So you need to learn how to report in response to the needs that these various audiences have. So as a quick aside, if you go through those first two courses, you will receive an official UC Davis certificate, for Cyber Academy Defense. And like I said, people might stop there, but people who really want the full foundation of skills will go on to this attack course, which we also call reverse engineering and exploitation. And what will happen there is you'll begin by developing skills to reverse engineer unknown executable files. You need to figure out what a file does. Is it malware? And oftentimes you can't execute it to find out what it does. You have to, analyze the code. And so this is where some people go, well, but I have to be a programmer to do that. And the truth is you don't have to be a programmer. And actually one of our experts from NSA believes that people who are not programmers end up being better at reverse engineering than programmers because they don't have the preconceptions about software that programmers have. You'll also learn to exploit server and application software using some common techniques to which systems are still vulnerable. You'll experiment with ways to evade antivirus software, and you'll find that those are actually pretty easy. You'll write and deploy custom malware. You'll develop a payload and you'll launch it against a target. And I should add, this is actually all in the context of a story where you've gone undercover in a Russian cybercrime group. And the Russian cybercrime group asks you at this point to spearphish the HR department of a defense contractor and get a persistent foothold on a computer system. Then after you do that, you'll be asked to use something called SQL injection to exploit their personnel database and exfiltrate the data. Since you're working for the good guys undercover, that data will be scrubbed before it's sent to the bad guys. And then human intelligence determines that the FSB, Russian State Security, is behind the cybercrime group. So you will plan and execute an attack in simulation, I might hasten to add, against the FSB to exploit their command and control database and exfiltrate key data about their operations. So if you complete all three courses, you can see you have a pretty broad foundation in both defensive and offensive cybersecurity.
Ray, can you expand a bit on the skills needed for someone coming into this field? It seems like people with a computer science background, that's a good start, but you don't need a computer science background. You don't need to have a degree from a UC campus to enter this field. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. A relatively high percentage of professionals in this field do not have that background. I mean, we have had people with computer science backgrounds or engineering backgrounds, uh, and they've succeeded. But we've also had people with those backgrounds who have not succeeded in the program because they had the wrong personalities. And to give you some examples of some people who've succeeded who you might not have expected, uh, one of our most successful early students uh, is a young woman who's a high school dropout who is working as a massage therapist. And 2 years later, she is a very respected member of the international cybersecurity community. She speaks at conferences, and she also has over 5,000 Twitter followers. Another finance manager of a Honda dealership, marketing manager of an e-commerce website. A couple of my favorites. We had a guy working as a forklift operator at Costco. And he just was great at this. And a young woman with a degree in early childhood education working as a nanny. She was also great at this. So, I mean, these examples are meant to tell you that although a technical background is potentially helpful, it's not necessary to succeed. Is that enough, John? Or are there
Thank
other?
you. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. I think it's just a great opportunity for people who have the right personality to enter this field, and you're reinforcing that. Thanks, Ray.
Okay, great. So at this point, we've been talking the abstract. So if it's okay, I think what I'll do is I will do a little demo and give you a more tangible feel for what the program is like. Are there any questions before I do that from any of the people attending the webinar?
We have one question in our Q&A asking if there is math involved in the program.
Well, I mean, there's simple arithmetic because if you're doing something like if you're doing a buffer overflow exploit, you need to calculate, you know, how many bytes of stuff are on the stack of the machine that you're trying to push something onto. But it's not advanced math. It's like elementary school math. I mean, we don't do cryptography. I mean, that's an intensely mathematical field, and it's a thing unto itself. So that was not something the Department of Defense thought it was important for us to cover in this program.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So, oops, I went the wrong way. So let me exit this and go over to my web browser. Okay, so this is the curriculum website for the program. And I'm going to do a demo. I'm going to play some video. And one thing I'll mention before I start is that the video won't look that great on your machine because it's coming through Zoom. But it's beautiful, professionally produced video, and it'll look wonderful played directly on your machine.
There's not been as many protections as there should be in most, if not all, of these industrial control systems. And now they're connected to the internet.
We have the capability to do X, Y, and Z. And it can be done without ever setting foot in your nation. It can be done remotely.
Our critical infrastructure is very vulnerable.
We're 10 years behind the world's best hackers. There's probably really only about 1,000 people in our country right now that really have the level of skills necessary to defend our infrastructure. That number needs to be 100,000.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and stop the video there. It goes on and provides more context. And these are the skills that you'll learn if you go through the program. And we've really been through this. I won't dwell on them. But I will take a few minutes to reinforce how the program works, because people have such a strong mental model of school that I want to make sure that everyone realizes this is not school as usual. So again, we create realistic stories of professional work where you'll play an authentic role and do the same tasks that professionals do. And you'll produce the same work products that a professional produces. We do divide our cohorts of students into small, what we call learning teams, and you'll meet regularly with your mentor in scheduled meetings. There'll be 1 or 2 a week. And then your mentor is always available during reasonable hours. I mean, 3 in the morning, probably not, but like 6 or 7 o'clock, sure, to give you help, advice, and feedback on your work. And so all of your tasks will be assigned by a simulated email or video call from a fictional employer. And in this course, your boss is the head of Cyber Team 10, a fictional government cyber operations agency. You'll be given a project roadmap, which is a high-level work plan for accomplishing the task you're asked to accomplish. It will be detailed enough to keep you on track, but not so detailed that you can follow it by rote without some complex creative thought, trying some things, messing up, and trying other things. We have learning resources that are very specifically curated and indexed to the things you're being asked to accomplish. You'll submit your work in a learning management system, which will route it to your mentor. Your mentor will provide feedback on your work, oftentimes much more detailed feedback than you might expect. And we use what's called a mastery-based approach, which means that you won't just like get a C and say go on, but what will happen is if you really haven't exhibited the targeted level of mastery of the knowledge and skills involved, your mentor will ask you to go back and redo some aspects of your work and improve it. Your mentor during the small group meetings might do a number of things. One is group problem solving, where if you're stuck on something, you might bring it in if it's of general interest. You, the mentor, and your fellow students would work through it. Another thing might be a technology demonstration. And that's not going to be an hour lecture. It's going to be a very focused demonstration of how to use some complex piece of technology like a software application. And one of the most important things that will happen in those meetings is a reflection discussion, where you talk about what are the important lessons learned and how do I take those away and apply them in real world work. The program will teach you to do things that are illegal if done without appropriate authority. We have zero tolerance for people abusing what they learned in the program. But our disapproval is probably the least of your worries, because in many cases, if you use these for real without permission, you're committing a felony. So you will be warned constantly about that. So again, here are the 3 courses. The first 2 are defense. The third is attack. Let's go into the first course. Okay, I'm going to skip all the front matter here. By the way, this is some pre-work that we recommend if you're coming into this program without a strong background in computer networks and protocols. We recommend that you download a tool for what's called packet analysis, low-level network traffic analysis. And some colleagues at the University of Massachusetts have kindly allowed us to use some of their small labs, the kind of labs that I disparaged early, but they do give you some basic familiarity. We recommend a book called Practical Packet Analysis. And if you don't have a background in computer networks and protocols, we recommend that you watch a few videos that were produced by Cisco, which are about computer networks and protocols. Some people find these videos to be fairly dry, but they're extremely information laden, and they're certainly worth watching. And then we'll recommend some resources that will be valuable for you if you're thinking about a career in cybersecurity. And this particular one that's here is a blog by a woman named Leslie Cathart, who blogs, as you might expect, about beginning careers in information security. The Practical Packet Analysis book, again, the course policies. Oh, we got a call from our boss. Let's take it.
Welcome to Cyber Team 10. I'm afraid there's not much time for introductions and orientation. I'm going to need you to get to work right away. I'll follow up with an email to get you started. I'm sorry there's not more time to train you, but we're on the front lines and there are lives at stake. You'll have to learn on the job.
Wow, so much for easing into things, right? So he does follow up with an email. And what the email says is that human intelligence intercepted a message between members of a cyber crime group. And the essence of the message is that the website of a key supplier of the United States Navy is vulnerable to a type of attack called a local file inclusion exploit. If you're an experienced hacker, these few lines of text tell you everything you need to know to exploit that website and to own the server, because the webmaster is a super user. But since you are presumably not an experienced hacker, we're going to guide you through this process. The goal being to help you to think like an attacker. Okay. Again, something I mentioned earlier that I want to stress is you will do all of your work in an Amazon Web Services private cloud environment. And we do this because we don't want to expose vulnerable machines that you'll be working with, like, for example, the web server we're talking about here, to the internet where real hackers will attack them. And we also don't want to expose any real malware, which you will be working with, to the machine you're running on or to any network you're on. So you will remotely connect to a virtual machine in this environment, and you'll do all of your work there. Okay. I mentioned the young woman who's a high school dropout working as a massage therapist. And this is her. And for some of the early tasks, we recorded videos of our early students talking about the experience, because we found that later students found it somewhat reassuring to hear from people who've gone before them.
It doesn't matter if it never would have occurred to you to do something malicious, because it will occur to somebody out there. And you'll be completely vulnerable when that somebody finds your server if you haven't taken steps to protect it in advance. And you can't take steps to protect it until you've put yourself in the shoes of an intruder interested in getting in and messing around.
So she talks about how initially she felt bad about being asked to do an attack as the first thing, but then she really came to the strong realization that thinking like an attacker is an essential skill. This is the project roadmap for the first part of the first task. So the first thing we do is we introduce you to the Amazon Web Services virtual cloud environment. It's called an Amazon Workspace. And you will connect remotely. And everyone in this workspace will get a Windows 10 virtual machine. So even if you're coming in on a Mac like I would be, you're on Windows in this environment. As a warm-up, we asked you to download and install the Firefox web browser on your virtual machine. We could have done that for you, but we just want you to touch the environment, get used to connecting remotely and doing something. Then you go into the deep end of the pool, to be cliche, and you're asked to break into that web server and verify that it is indeed vulnerable or perhaps not vulnerable. So a lot of our early students had questions, so we asked some government recommended experts to answer those questions. So a fundamental question is, okay, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to hack into this website, and if I find a vulnerability, I'm going to fix it for them. Is that okay?
So I'm out on my favorite site, and I happen to notice that there's a directory traversal bug inside of their site. People ask, well, is it okay for me to go fix that bug on their site? The answer is no. It is absolutely not okay to hack another person's site, even if you're trying to do good or fix the site.
So he goes on, he talks about something called responsible disclosure, which means that if you discover what you believe to be a security problem like this, you disclose it privately to the owners of the site. And if they don't fix it in a reasonable length of time, you can disclose it publicly, but you would never go in and fix it yourself. So admittedly, this task is a little bit artificial, but the point is to help you to learn to think like an attacker. So the vulnerability is something called a local file inclusion vulnerability. So you guys know how websites work, right? So every page in a website is a file. And what your browser is doing says, send me the file for this page. And it renders it and you look at it. Well, there is a type of bug that can occur in the menus of some websites. And it will allow you to request a file that's not part of the website. Say, for example, the file where the hash encoded passwords are stored. And that's exactly what you're going to do here. But before you do that, you need to look around. You need to say, is there anything suspicious on the site? Maybe the bad guys have already exploited it and they've installed some malware. So you need to figure out, has that happened? Then we go on and we talk a little bit about how websites request pages at a low level. And we introduce you to something called Burp Suite. And Burp Suite is a tool that's going to sit between your web browser and this possibly vulnerable website that's going to allow you to reshape queries to do things like request files that aren't part of the website. So how do you learn to use Burp Suite? Well, you could ask your mentor. Your mentor might do a demonstration. You could talk to your fellow students, which is fine. But we also have not one, but we have 4 video tutorials on using Burp Suite. And they are time coded to make it easier to refer back to them if there's something you want to go look at. In particular, the last one is about how to exploit local file inclusion vulnerabilities. We have more tutorial material on local file inclusion vulnerabilities and how to fix them if you encounter one. And you might say, wow, if I'm going to have to fix it, do I have to be a programmer? And the answer is no. Google and being a smart, thoughtful person are what you need to do something like that. The web server is a Linux machine, so we have a tutorial on how passwords are stored in Linux. So there is a password file in a Linux machine, but the passwords aren't stored there. They're stored in another file called shadow, and they are hash encoded. But if you can access that file and you can extract the hash of a password, you can use a tool called John the Ripper to crack the password. And so here's a tutorial on John the Ripper. So you're going to do exactly this. You are going to use John the Ripper to crack the webmaster's password. And then you're asked to submit a report to your boss detailing if you found anything wrong with the website and what your experience was like exploiting it using Burp Suite and John the Ripper. So you're going to submit your work. And it tells you exactly what you should submit. You will make a real submission. I get to make a fake submission. And my submission was evaluated. It usually takes a little longer than a millisecond. But as I said, we use a mastery-based approach. So quite often what will happen is you'll get a lot of feedback and be asked to redo part of your work to improve it and to improve your mastery of the underlying knowledge and skills. So anyway, I think I'm going to stop the demo there. So are there questions about the demo from anyone?
We don't see any questions coming from the attendees, but my thought is around just the skills that you'll be getting from the courses. These are skills that you can show a potential employer. Is that right, Ray?
Yes, absolutely. You can list them on a resume as skills you have. We actually encourage people who don't have a professional IT background to list the things they've done in these courses as cybersecurity experience on their resume, and highlighting the particular skills that they have, because the important thing is that you have the skills to do the job, not that you have, say, a degree in something, or even in most cases that you have some certification. Did I see a question up here? I do see a couple of questions. When did this curriculum start at UC Davis? It started about a year ago, I guess. Is that right, John?
Yeah, about 15 months ago.
Mm-hmm. Right. And and somebody says most employers require a year working in IT fields. Are there internships available? Well, we will help position you to get a job. And one of the interesting, but then it will certainly be up to you. Use what you've learned and use the support we give you to get a job yourself. But you'll see all kinds of things in job listings. You'll see things where for an entry-level position, they want you to have 3 years of experience and advanced certification and blah, 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 blah. But that's kind of wishful thinking on their part. And the truth is that what they really want is they want people who can do the work. So last year, before the plague hit, I was at the RSA conference in San Francisco, and there was a panel on non-traditional hiring. And one of the things that they mentioned is that although employers ask for these things, you should really apply for any job if you say check half the boxes in what they're asking for. And so, you just shouldn't be bashful. But the truth is that the best way to apply for a job, the best way to find a job, is not to just send your resume into the black hole of HR, because that's a completely unpredictable process. But instead, what you should be doing is you should be networking. You should be meeting people in the field. You should be letting them know that you're a smart and skilled person. And through networking, you'll find a lot more opportunities than just by sending in resumes. And you say, well, gee, there's COVID, so can I do that? Well, it turns out that as conferences are going online, they're working very hard to create virtual networking opportunities. And then there are also a variety of groups you can participate online. There are various forums. There are also Twitter sub-communities. And we encourage you from the beginning of the program to participate in those, first of all, as an observer, and as you become more knowledgeable as someone who contributes. Of course, contributes, at your level of ability, not overstating what you know and being respectful to the community. But making those connections is really the best route to a job, year of experience or not, because like I said, they want people who can do the work. And if you can demonstrate you can do the work, and if someone can vouch for you as someone who can do the work, then that's great.
Ray, we've got about 10 minutes left. Let's get to finish up the slide deck. There's some admin details that our attendees will want to know about.
Okay. So again, I think we've talked a lot about this StoryShare curriculum approach to build real world skills. I won't go over it again. You do need to be reasonably computer literate. I mean, this is a technical career, and you have to like using computers. You have to be comfortable using computers. You have to successfully complete the first course to be permitted to move on to the more advanced courses. And because the Department of Defense funded development of the course, only US citizens and green card holders can register for that final course, the attack course. And you need you can have any modern laptop or desktop computer with a high-speed internet connection to work on, because you will be doing your work connecting to an Amazon Web Services private cloud. So, I mean, here are a couple of testimonials. Someone wasn't expecting a massive career change and did achieve one, and found that this field is really a field of people like the person who wrote this. I mean, the people who work in this field are intelligent, they're curious about how things work, and curiosity is highly prized. And if you're that kind of a person, you'll really find a community of people who are just like you.
Ray, I'll take this. So our next cohort is January. We're finishing up courses right now. So we're planning about 3 months out. The first course starts January 18th. And we want you to enroll about 10 days prior to that, because there's some setup that has to happen on your computer. And Ray and his team uses that time to have you set up. So when the course actually starts, you're ready to go. The Cybersecurity Mini Immersion is $15.99. Then the second course starts April 12th. Then the third attack course will begin July 12th. And there are the costs for that. We go to the next slide. We'll show you some discounts available. If you're with a company, the company may send 3 or more here. You'll get 10% off the group. For attending the information session, we'll be giving you a discount of $100 once you sign off. And if you enroll 14 days prior to the start date, we'll give you a 10% early enrollment discount as well. There are ways to finance your education through UC Davis. Tina handles our student loans and state agency funding. There's her email address. And then Debbie and Tom work with military and veterans related funding. There's their email as well. Keep in mind, this session will be available for your review starting tomorrow. So all the emails that are contacts for this program will be available, including the financing your education emails. That is the end of our formal presentation. We'd love to hear any questions you might have regarding any aspects of the info session, or questions or comments relating to the curriculum.
We have one question in our Q&A to maybe address. An attendee is asking if a high school student at the junior level, if it's possible for that person to do the course, or is it better to wait until after high school?
It is certainly possible. The course requires a high time commitment, so you need to make sure that you can devote that time. And I mean, we actually have had a few high school students go through it, and I'll be honest, we've had mixed results. Some high school students don't feel like sticking with it, but then we have had a few who've actually done quite well. So it really depends on you as a person more than, are you a high school student? Are you a college student? Do you already have a PhD or whatever? But I would probably, I mean, if I was giving somebody advice, I would probably advise finishing high school first.
Alex, do you see any other questions coming in?
One question just came in, actually. What does the schedule look like? Is the course tailored for someone with a full-time job?
The course requires a tremendous time commitment. You really, the way the course is currently structured, need to commit to spending an honest 25 hours a week in the course. And that sounds like a huge commitment, but it is doable. I mean, we've had many people go through the program successfully doing that. And you can certainly always take a break between courses if you need to.
Great, thank you.
Lillian says, do we get a certificate? You actually get 2 certificates from UC Davis, one in cybersecurity defense and one in cybersecurity attack. If you were talking about industry certifications, we do not prepare you to teach them to take the multiple choice tests that one takes to get an industry certification. When we designed the course working with DoD, they were not interested in certifications, they were interested in skills. That being said, if you think that a certification will be valuable to you in applying for a job, we'll be glad to recommend a low-cost cram course to help you memorize the stuff to pass the multiple choice test after you complete the course.
I think the key here is this is a skills-based course. The employers are looking for skills, not for certifications for new employees.
Right, and then there's actually a term in the field called paper tiger. And what that is that's a person who has a certification but can't do the work. And so being able to do the work is what matters. But that being said, if you think a certification is valuable in your plan for seeking a job, we can certainly advise you on how to get one.
I think we're done with all of our questions, unless there's anything else. We really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for hanging out with us for almost this full hour. You have our contact information. We welcome feedback, comments, or additional questions on this info session. We appreciate your time, and thanks again for attending the UC Davis Socratic Arts info session on cybersecurity this morning.
Yeah, one thing Lauren wants to know about information on getting certifications.
Mm-hmm.
You should probably contact me, Lauren. I don't know if you have was my email address in this or not?
Yes, sir, it was. Your email address is available on the slide.
Okay. Just to make sure. That's my email address. So I'll be glad to talk to you about certifications. Give you advice on that.
Okay, again, everyone, thanks for coming.
Yes, certainly. Thank you all very much for spending some time with us. And if this seems like the right program for you, we'd love to have you, and we'll see you in a few weeks when it starts.